November 8, 1942. This was the moment everything changed. When the unstoppable German war machine met a weapon it couldn't outshoot, the M1 Garand. What happened next shattered a century of military doctrine and redefined the future of warfare. Sidi Bouzid, Tunisia, North Africa. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain as Obergefreiter Wilhelm Schmidt crouched behind a low stone wall. His Karabiner 98K rifle was clenched tightly in both hands. The bolt felt familiar in his palm. 3 years of service had made its rhythm second nature. Load one round, fire, pull back the bolt handle, eject the spent casing, push forward, load the next round, aim, fire again. This was the rhythm of war, a rhythm that had carried German infantry through Poland, France, and deep into Russia. 5 rounds in the internal magazine, fired one at a time, each requiring manual cycling of the bolt. Across the dusty field, American infantrymen advanced in a loose skirmish line. Schmidt had been told these Americans were inexperienced, soft, unprepared for real combat. Their equipment was supposedly inferior, their training inadequate. What happened in the next 60 seconds would prove those assumptions catastrophically wrong. The Americans opened fire. The sound was unlike anything Schmidt had ever heard, not the familiar crack. Pause. Crack of bolt-action rifles, but a sustained roar. Semi-automatic fire that didn't stop. 8 rounds, fired as quickly as the trigger could be pulled. No pause to work a bolt, no break in the rhythm. Just continuous, deadly precision. While Schmidt managed to fire perhaps 3 shots, the American soldier across from him had already emptied his entire clip and was reloading. This was the M1 Garand rifle, and it was about to demolish German infantry doctrine. The psychological impact on soldiers trained to believe in the superiority of German arms and tactics was devastating. This wasn't just about firepower. It was about witnessing a complete tactical transformation forced upon an entire military system in real time. The roots of German confidence lay in centuries of military tradition. The Karabiner 98K, adopted on June 21, 1935, represented the pinnacle of bolt-action rifle design. Accurate out to 550 yards, reliable in mud and frost, simple enough for conscripts to maintain. It embodied everything a German rifle should be. It fired the powerful 7.92 AK-47 mm Mauser cartridge, capable of punching through substantial cover. In trained hands, the Kar 98K had conquered most of Europe. German doctrine emphasized disciplined, aimed fire from prepared positions. Each round had to count. A skilled soldier could deliver about 15 aimed shots per minute, working the bolt with mechanical precision, against Polish, French, and British troops armed with similar bolt actions. This was more than enough. When American forces entered major combat operations in North Africa during Operation Torch, German intelligence underestimated them. Reports painted a picture of industrial abundance but military inexperience. The M1 Garand was mentioned. Yes, but not feared. Analysts noted its 8-round capacity and self-loading action, but dismissed it as heavy and less accurate than the Kar 98K. They couldn't have been more wrong. American forces had already tested the Garand in the Philippines, where it earned a reputation that bordered on myth. Japanese troops, facing its relentless fire, often believed they were being attacked by machine guns. General Douglas MacArthur himself praised the rifle's performance in brutal jungle warfare. By the time the Germans met it in North Africa, the M1 Garand had been battle-proven, forged in mud, heat, and chaos. The clash that morning near Sidi Bouzid shattered illusions with brutal efficiency. Schmidt's unit, expecting to halt the American advance with disciplined bolt-action fire, was met instead by an unrelenting storm, not from machine guns, which they knew how to counter, but from rifles, fired continuously, without pause. German soldiers fired, worked their bolts, reacquired targets, 15 rounds a minute if they were lucky. But each American could fire 30 to 40 rounds per minute, accurately, relentlessly. The Germans couldn't suppress them. Every time they raised their heads, multiple shots whizzed past instantly. The math was undeniable. The myth of German superiority had just been torn apart. not by strategy, not by numbers, but by innovation. That day, November 8, 1942, the battlefield changed forever. In a 2-minute engagement, a German soldier armed with a Kar-98K might fire 30 carefully aimed rounds. An American soldier with an M1 Garand could unleash 80 in the same amount of time. More critically, the German rifleman had to break his sight picture after every shot, lift his head, work the bolt, reacquire the target, and fire again. The American simply pulled the trigger 8 times in rapid succession, his aim barely disturbed by the rifle's modest recoil. The M1 Garand's semi-automatic operation relied on a gas-operated system. As a round fired, propellant gases were diverted through a small port in the barrel into a cylinder below. This gas drove a piston that cycled the action, ejecting the spent cartridge and chambering the next round, all in a fraction of a second. The bolt closed again before the shooter's eye ever lost alignment. Accuracy did not suffer despite the speed of fire. Tests at Springfield Armory demonstrated the M1 could consistently maintain 4-minute of angle groups, roughly a 4-inch spread at 100 yards, and many production rifles performed even better. General George S. Patton, in a letter dated January 26, 1945, to Major General Levin H. Campbell, Jr., Chief of Ordnance, wrote, "In my opinion, the M1 rifle is the greatest battle implement ever devised." This was not hyperbole. Patton understood that the M1 Garand had fundamentally changed infantry warfare. A single soldier armed with it possessed the firepower of several men carrying bolt-action rifles without sacrificing accuracy, reliability, or range. By mid-1943, entire U.S. Army divisions were equipped with the Garand. Between 1937 and 1945, approximately 4,040 802 M1 rifles were manufactured. Springfield Armory in Massachusetts produced 3,526,922, while Winchester Repeating Arms in Connecticut built another 530,880. By D-Day, June 6, 1944, nearly every American infantryman carried an M1 Garand, a historic achievement. An entire army of millions, armed with semi-automatic rifles, faced opponents who still fought with bolt-action weapons. The M1 Garand fired the powerful .30-06 Springfield cartridge, a round that had served American forces since 1906. It propelled a 150-grain bullet at nearly 2,800 feet per second, delivering tremendous energy even at long range. The rifle fed from an 8-round en-bloc clip, inserted directly into the receiver. When the last shot was fired, the clip automatically ejected with a distinctive metallic ping. Some feared the sound might alert nearby enemies, but in the chaos of battle, it was inaudible beyond a few yards. The Garand's reliability became legendary. It endured North African dust, Italian mud, European rain, and even the freezing winters of Korea, yet it continued to fire with minimal maintenance. It required no tools to field strip. A soldier could disassemble and clean it in minutes. German observers noted this rugged reliability with both respect and frustration. German infantry doctrine relied heavily on machine guns for suppressive fire, while riflemen provided accurate, deliberate shots. The MG-34 and later the MG-42 were brilliant weapons, fast, deadly, but dependent on crews, ammunition bearers, and vulnerable to artillery. The M1 Garand changed everything. Now every American rifleman was a source of sustained firepower. A single squad of Garand-armed soldiers could generate a volume of fire comparable to that of a German machine gun team, but spread across 8 or 9 independent shooters. Suppressing one American meant facing them all. The Italian campaign, from September 1943 onward, revealed this imbalance clearly. From the Salerno landings to the brutal push toward Rome, German units repeatedly found themselves outgunned by American infantry. A captured report from March 1944, written by the German 94th Infantry Division after the fall of Rome, noted that encounters with American troops typically resulted in German units being pinned down by rifle fire, even when Germans held superior defensive positions. The report concluded by recommending an increased allocation of machine guns to compensate for the American advantage in infantry firepower. The German command recognized the problem and tried to fix it. In 1941, they introduced the Gewehr 41, their first semi-automatic rifle. Two competing designs emerged, the G41M from Mauser and the G41W from Walter. Both proved deeply flawed. German engineers had been forbidden to drill gas ports in the barrel, fearing excessive wear, forcing them to design complex gas trap systems at the muzzle. These systems were heavy, unreliable, and prone to fouling. Production remained limited, with estimates between 6,000 and 15,000 units before both models were abandoned. Studying captured Soviet SVT-40 rifles, German designers realized the gas port system they had dismissed actually worked far better. This revelation led to the creation of the Gewehr 43, introduced in October 1943. The G43 featured a simplified gas system and a detachable 10-round magazine. It was lighter, more reliable, and better suited for field use. Around 402,613 rifles were produced by war's end, with approximately 53,000 equipped with telescopic sights for designated marksmen. Soldiers who received the G43 valued it highly, but it came too late and in too few numbers. For every 50 Kar 98K rifles, only one G43 was made. Most German infantrymen continued to fight the entire war with bolt-action rifles. Even those lucky enough to receive a G43 found it less robust than the American Garand, more complex, harder to maintain, and plagued by parts shortages as German industry crumbled under Allied bombing. Germany had entered the war without a viable semi-automatic infantry rifle, and they never caught up. The impact of the M1 Garand went far beyond sheer firepower. It transformed American infantry tactics. Training emphasized rapid target acquisition, continuous fire, and aggressive maneuvering. Every U.S. rifle squad could lay down suppressive fire while advancing, half the squad firing while the other half moved. The effect was devastating. At Omaha Beach, June 6, 1944, the German 352nd Infantry Division defended heavily fortified positions atop the bluffs. With 12,000 men, reinforced concrete bunkers, interlocking machine gun nests, and perfect fields of fire, they should have been invincible. But the Americans came armed with the rifle that changed everything. When the Americans reached the base of the bluffs, their fire was overwhelming. Every man carried a semi-automatic rifle, and every man used it relentlessly. German defenders could no longer maintain aimed fire. Incoming rounds were simply too many. Machine gun crews were overwhelmed, targeted by dozens of Garands firing in unison. Within minutes, positions that had been fortified for years began to fall. The battles across Normandy in June and July 1944 gave German troops an education in American firepower. In the tight hedgerows of northern France, where engagements happened at less than 100 yards, the M1 Garand rapid fire proved decisive. Traditional German tactics, relying on small covering teams while others maneuvered, collapsed completely. Covering fire from M1 Garands was too intense, too sustained. German troops were forced to keep their heads down, unable to return fire effectively. Statistical shock. After the war, the U.S. Army's Historical Division analyzed thousands of after-action reports and casualty data. Their conclusion was staggering. American infantry squads consistently inflicted far higher casualties than expected based on their numbers. Many factors contributed: artillery, air support, logistics. But one stood out. The consistent advantage in infantry firefights pointed clearly to the M1 Garand. American soldiers could win engagements even when outnumbered, as long as they had cover and enough ammunition. The rifle had changed not only combat, but the psychology of the battlefield itself. Germany's desperate answer. The German response came in the form of the Sturmgewehr 44, the world's first true assault rifle. It fired an intermediate 7.922 33mm Kurz cartridge from a 30-round magazine in either semi-automatic or full auto mode. It was revolutionary. Approximately 425,127 were produced, mostly in 1944 and 1945. But like the G43, it came too late, and in too few numbers. Most German infantrymen never even saw one. Those who did often lacked ammunition as Germany's industrial capacity collapsed under relentless Allied bombing. The man behind the legend. The M1 Garand story began long before the war. John Cantius Garand, born January 1, 1888, in Saint-Rémy, Quebec, moved to the United States in 1899. He began working at Springfield Armory on November 4, 1919, devoting nearly 2 decades to perfecting his semi-automatic rifle design. Early prototypes experimented with different calibers and gas systems. The U.S. Army initially favored a 276 caliber cartridge, which offered better ballistics than the .30-06. But General Douglas MacArthur, then Chief of Staff, insisted on keeping the .30-06 for ammunition compatibility across machine guns and logistics. That 1932 decision delayed adoption, but ultimately proved wise. The birth of a titan. Throughout the 1930s, Garand refined his rifle. It underwent extensive testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground and Springfield Armory. Problems were found and fixed. The gas system was simplified from a complex gas trap to a reliable gas port system. The trigger was refined, the stock reshaped for better ergonomics. On January 9, 1936, it was officially adopted as the U.S. rifle, caliber .30, M1. Production began slowly, a few thousand rifles in 1937 and 1938, but accelerated rapidly as war loomed. By January 1941, factories were producing 600 rifles per day. Soon, the M1 Garand became the heartbeat of the American infantry. The rifle that never quit. The M1 Garand served throughout World War II, the Korean War, and even into the early years of Vietnam. It wasn't officially replaced until the M14 was adopted in 1957, with first deliveries in 1959. Even then, Garands remained in use with Reserve and National Guard units into the 1970s. But its greatest effect was not just physical, it was psychological. The collapse of a myth. For German soldiers, the M1 Garand shattered a deeply ingrained belief that German technology and training were inherently superior. They had been told that American troops were soft, inexperienced, and reliant on machines. Yet on the battlefield, those same Americans fought with speed, precision, and relentless firepower. When well-trained German infantrymen found themselves losing firefights one-on-one, their confidence crumbled. The myth of superiority died under a storm of .30-06 rounds. Post-war studies of small unit actions confirmed it. American infantry inflicted disproportionate casualties in firefights. U.S. troops suffered fewer losses from rifle fire, another testament to the Garand's advantage in speed, stability, and sustained accuracy. Even superior German tactics and positioning could only delay the inevitable. The sheer volume of accurate, aimed fire from American riflemen eventually broke defenses, suppressing positions and allowing maneuver units to advance and destroy. The legacy that redefined war. The M1 Garand's legacy extends far beyond World War II. It became the proof of concept that defined modern small arms development. That a self-loading rifle, reliable and accurate, could multiply the effectiveness of every soldier on the field. From the M1 Garand came the M14, the M16, and eventually the AR platform that dominates to this day. Its impact was not just mechanical, it was strategic, psychological, and revolutionary, because on that day, November 8, 1942, in North Africa, one rifle didn't just win a battle, it rewrote the future of modern combat. Every modern infantry rifle, from the AK-47 to the M16, owes a silent debt to the M1 Garand. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement, a declaration that precision and volume of fire could coexist, that the future belonged not to the fastest trigger finger but to the smartest engineer. The German army, despite its discipline and tactical brilliance, could not outthink physics. In the time it took a soldier with a Kar 98K to fire 3 shots, an American with an M1 Garand could deliver 8. Accurate, devastating, relentless. Numbers don't lie. On the battlefield, mathematics became destiny. For every engagement, from the scorching deserts of North Africa to the frozen forests of the Ardennes, the Garand tipped the scale. It gave each American soldier the firepower of 2. And when multiplied by hundreds of thousands, that advantage rewrote the rules of combat. General George S. Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. He wasn't exaggerating. To the Germans, it was more than a weapon. It was a sound they came to dread. That metallic ping as the clip ejected meant one thing. An American was reloading. but he'd be firing again in less than 2 seconds. By the end of the war, the Garand had done more than win battles. It had changed how nations built their armies. It proved that giving the common soldier the best possible tool could alter the course of history itself. And long after the echoes of those shots faded across Europe, the legacy remained. Every time a soldier today squeezes a trigger on a semi-automatic rifle, a small part of that moment in Tunisia, November 8, 1942, still lives on. Because that day, in the blinding desert sun, one man with an M1 Garand showed the world that innovation could defeat tradition, and that the future of warfare had just begun.